Hello, I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and every week or so I write a newsletter all about international radio trends and the future of radio. And this is the podcast version where I attempt to record it without hesitation, deviation, repetition, or indeed any editing whatsoever. Today, this time around, I'm talking about Australian radio and why Australian radio is booming. It's doing brilliantly. In Brisbane, Nova 106.9 is Brisbane's number one station in share. It's running at 12.6%. It's also achieved the biggest QM ever for the Brisbane market of 700,000. Commercial radio revenue is growing strongly too. It's up 11.2% year on year, according to Commercial Radio Australia. So what is Aussie radio's secret? Well, let's do the easy one first. Radio stations are posting some record audience figures. Yes, they certainly are. 700,000 listeners for Nova is very, very impressive. But Brisbane's population has grown by 31% over the last 10 years, so perhaps another reason that radio stations are posting record listener numbers is because there are more listeners than ever before. And just to underline that, Nova's 12.6% share isn't a record or anywhere near it, actually. 5 years ago, Nova was posting a 14.1% share. And that's also the case in the UK, where radio is posting biggest ever audience press releases. Once more, because the population is bigger than ever before. In the UK, population has grown by 6.3% in 10 years. So really, unless radio is reaching 6.3% more listeners in 10 years, then radio is actually going backwards. Secondly, though, those numbers aren't AM/FM figures, they're multi-platform. Something like 35% of all listening in the capital cities happens over DAB+ in Australia. I gather internet listening is also quite high, something like 15%, although the CRA doesn't publish much data on that. Radio here is thriving because it's multi-platform, not just FM/AM. The CRA don't publish any platform split for the main AM/FM stations. I'm unsure why. I hope that the new CEO fixes that. I actually do now have them after releasing this as a newsletter, but I have them from a nefarious source. But what can I tell you? I can tell you that AM/FM accounts for about 60%-ish of total listening. That's total average audience over time, so total listening basically. DAB is about 20%. And digital, mobile, PC, speakers and stuff like that, about 17%, but I shouldn't have those figures. Anyway, just to underline, in the car I listen to a station, an AM radio station, but I listen on DAB, and at home I exclusively listen to radio on smart speakers, streamed over the internet, and I'm streaming, I'm listening to the radio streaming, but I'm not listening to AM/FM. Now, thirdly, what the CRA doesn't publish is the time spent listening. I suspect that's showing decline because every single country is showing decline, including the UK. It's not all bright news. But is these lovely figures all due to the new hybrid measurement that we have here in Australia? I'm not so sure. I've not seen any big changes from that. The changes are still rolling out, as I understand it. There are 60,000 people that make up the annual radio sample size, but only a panel of 2,000 people are feeding in streaming data. That's 3%. The main hybrid element referred to in the release last year was changing most of the 60,000 from a paper diary to an online one, which is a change that's already been done in the UK. Aussie radio is doing well in terms of revenue, though, undeniably, given the 11.2% year-on-year growth. And part of that is, of course, due to the apparent end of the pandemic. Melbourne, for example, went into another lockdown towards the end of May 2021, spent almost all of August, September and October in lockdown. Interestingly, it saw a 9.8% year-on-year rise in revenue. This time around, Brisbane, Sydney and Perth saw greater increases in spite of not being in a lockdown. So maybe some of it is to do with the pandemic, maybe some of it isn't. But I also think Aussie radio is doing well revenue-wise because Commercial Radio Australia is doing a good job with promoting the medium. Similarly, the UK's Radio Centre is having similar results. A strong industry lobbying group is good for the business, and those countries who don't have one and who don't work together aren't seeming to do very well. Another example, Finland's Radio Media, which does a great job of getting advertisers interested in radio as a whole. The US, for example, does not have a radio lobbying group. It's got a broadcasters lobbying group, the NAB. They're very good, but there isn't somebody shouting radio's story all the time, and perhaps there should be. Much change in the Brisbane radio scene tomorrow. As I wrote this, when ratings restart, 4KQ disappeared at the end of June the 30th. After the regulator required the sale of one of ARN's stations following its purchase of Grant Broadcasters. Now, last year, I pointed out that the age of 4KQ listeners was an issue. 75% over 50, were aged over 55. And I reckon that was probably going to be a bit of a problem. Now, Barbecue Bob Gallagher, he is formerly of the 97.3 Breakfast Show, though he was also 4KQ's programme director in the 1990s and early 2000s. He's been signed as the first local voice on 4BH. He's also the only local voice on 4BH. That's the only remaining music station on AM. The rest of the station, voice tracked from Melbourne. Though it does no longer share a music log with the station in Melbourne, it's switched to a more classic hit format over the last few weeks. Meanwhile, 4KQ Breakfast Show hosts Laurel, Gary and Mark have been signed by 4BC. 4BC is a news talk station. So I found it a little confusing to read in the release that they're bringing in their Good Times and Great Hits show to 4BC. Will they be playing songs, I asked when I wrote this. Yes, they are. It's a great signing, though. Breeny, the current Breakfast Show, Neil Breen, has moved to Afternoon Drive. The replacement to 4KQ is now on air, which is called SenQ, which joins SenTrack on the AM band here in Brisbane. It's been on DAB Plus for a while, though. They're marketing themselves well. Their Twitter account, though, does appear to be retweeting Sen1116, which is messy and confusing. That's where 4BH is here. It's one of the problems of putting frequencies in your names if you then try and retweet some of your content in other markets. Change too in the UK, where Steve Wright, aged 67, comes off BBC Radio 2 to be replaced by Scott Mills, aged 49, who himself comes off BBC Radio 1. He's way too old for Radio 1. Now, Steve Wright has been doing Radio 2 afternoons since 1999. I listened for a bit before the announcement last week, and I'll be honest, it wasn't the fun, exciting show that I remember from my youth. But Steve Wright's staying power is quite something, and everybody in the industry has a Steve Wright story, it seems. He's been a daily voice for many people almost forever. Between Radio 1, where I once listened, and Radio 2, he also broadcast on Talk Radio UK, on commercial radio, which was a strange old listen. And of course, before those two, he used to broadcast on Radio 210 in Reading, along with Mike Reed and various other people. Also, since I was in the UK the previous week, since I wrote this, I was able to listen to James O'Brien on LBC for a little while on the day before Boris Johnson resigned. I couldn't quite listen on the actual day itself, but YouTube to the rescue as ever. He's a class act and well worth listening to. Thank you to Richard Hilton, James Masterton and Brunn Audio Consulting for your ongoing support of this podcast and newsletter. I'm very grateful to you. If you would like to support my work in any way, hit the boost button if you're using a brand new podcast app. If not, try the Fountain app and they'll give you some free money to boost people like me with. That'll be always very nice. Or you can buy me a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland. You can become a member to give regularly or just give a one-off coffee or 5. I have a professional website. I say professional. It's james.cridland.net. It's got more details about who I am and what I do and whether I can help you further. And you can subscribe to this as a newsletter at james.crid.land. And until next time, keep listening.